Welcome back to Too Hot for TV. We are the podcast that looks at all things expanded universe. Today, I'm jumping into the expanded universe of WWE, or WWF as it was at the time. And I can't do this alone, obviously. So I'm here with Cam from the Police Box. Hi, Cam. Or, actually, Cam from the Conquistabores.
Yes, we're probably more apt of my for this one of my two sort of podcast ventures. Yeah, I am on the Polish Box for my Doctor Whoisms and my Conquistabores for my wrestling side of things. So yes, it's the two bands, the two podcast families.
We said we were going to try and get through this without mentioning Doctor Who, and we've already failed. But that's the last time.
I've just clicked in the back of my head, and I've just like gone, oh no, I've just failed at the first hurdle. Never mind.
So look, Cam, you're here as an expert on wrestling, I would say. You have a wrestling podcast. We're in a WhatsApp talking about wrestling. You love wrestling.
Yes.
What is your sort of history and relationship with wrestling in general, particularly WWE?
My first exposure ever to any kind of wrestling, really, would have been when one of my dad's business colleagues, my dad was a hotel manager, so he always had these meetings with different people involved in the business. And one guy decided to come to one of the meetings once at the hotel and produce a VHS tape from his briefcase and hand it to me. This sounds dodgier than it actually was, right? But he said, oh, this is that WWF thing. This is what all the kids are into these days. You might like it. There you go, Cam. So off I went with this VHS tape, and what he'd recorded for me off his newfangled Sky dish was the 1992 Royal Rumble, which I was lucky in the fact that that's probably one of the... It still remains the best Rumble for me, to be honest with you. The sheer star power that's in it. I worked out within probably 30 seconds that I hated Ric Flair because the man was like a walking peacock, and I really, really liked it. It was big, it was brash, it was essentially like this comic books thing come to life. I absolutely adored it. And then this business colleague of my dad's, proceeded to then record pretty much every pay-per-view of 1992 for me and then hand it to me later.
Nice.
So WrestleMania 8, SummerSlam 92 in the UK from Wembley, that was how I saw that.
Yeah.
And Survivor Series 92. And then about just before the 93 Rumble, my dad decided to jump in and get us Sky in the house. So we had, and obviously in the UK at the time, we got the pay-per-views for nothing because, hey, we were British.
Oh, really? I didn't realise that.
Yeah, we didn't get any kind of like charge for watching pay-per-views until, oh God, I can't remember now. I think it might have been even as late as like 2004, 2005 when Setanta Sport were doing it.
Oh, wow. So it was just free in the Sky Sports package?
Yeah. It was just it was on like Sky One and, and Sky Sports, just normal Sky Sports. So obviously you were paying for access to Sky, but it wasn't as if you had to pay an extra 20 quid just to watch WrestleMania that year or anything like that. So I kind of did that stupid thing you do when you're a teenager. So about 4 years after that, 96, I was like, I was 15 and you were like, oh, I don't really want to watch wrestling anymore because it's like pretend and that, innit? So, yeah, and I'm into like girls now, or attempting to be. And then, so I kind of like, the Iron Man match at WrestleMania 12 between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels bored the absolute tits off me. So then I quit. For 4 years, I missed the entirety of the Attitude Era.
Wow.
Yeah. And then there's a Mick Foley promo just before the WWF started on Channel 4 in 2000. Before the 2000 Royal Rumble, there's a Mick Foley promo where he turns from Mankind into Cactus Jack.
I know the one.
And has the whole thing against Triple H with the kind of, my name is Cactus Jack, and the first point of order is to kick your teeth all over Chicago. And that was me. And the 2000 Royal Rumble was back on Channel 4 for free. So I ended up watching that, and that's how I got back in, and I've been back into it ever since. Expanding out to, I will watch WWF, I will watch old WCW, I will watch Lucha Libre, I will watch New Japan, All Japan, Joshi Wrestling, I will watch anything German, like the 16 carat tournaments they have each year it's in Germany, in Oberhausen. Basically, if there's a ring involved, I'll watch it. And it's absolutely, for me, for me, it's the highest form of physical theatrical entertainment you can possibly get. And that's where I think people approach it wrong. People look at it as a sport, which if you go into that, you're looking at it as some kind of competitive thing.
Yeah.
And that's not that. If you go into it as this is theatre, this is a story, this is a performance being told to me live, then it makes far much more sense.
I see it as like a soap opera almost, with a mix, as you say, there's storylines, there's different story threads that go for weeks in, weeks out. I mean, the Bloodline storyline ran for about 5 years, something like that, didn't it?
It was, it changed here and there, but it was about 4 or 5 years.
So you've got huge storylines and smaller storylines somewhere that sometimes they don't go anywhere, but that's the beauty of it, seeing the ones that stick and the ones that don't, and the could-have-beens. I once heard it described as being like alpha male drag, which I think is, this big theatrical performance that these people put on with their entrances and their music. And then, as you say, once they get in the ring, you're just watching these incredible athletes do these things. And I know for the benefit of the listeners who may not be fans, it's not that it's fake, it's that it's predetermined. Everybody knows who's going to win. There are things that are rehearsed, there are things that are not rehearsed, and it's just a bunch of guys and girls doing these amazing performances that push their bodies to the limit and are, at the worst, a bit dull, and at their best, some of the most entertaining television or live shows you will ever watch.
It's absolutely fantastic, absolutely amazing. And I mean, it's as you say, it's far more athletic than people give it credit for sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people in Britain have this attitude that it's going to be like World of Sport, like Giant Haystacks and Big Daddy, which all respect to them. But, that was essentially two very large men shuffling around the place. And there's, in comparison to what you can have now, there's this fantastic, it's there's flippy stuff, there's technical wrestling, there's out-and-out brawling that goes on, there's hardcore stuff. There's things for everyone in a wrestling show. There's things for everyone.
Absolutely. So my history with wrestling is a little bit more potted. I liked wrestling as a kid. I couldn't tell you when I first started watching it, but the big SummerSlam 92, I was that era. But then a lot of the things I would get would be from the mid to late 80s, because I didn't have Sky. So it was very much VHSs that I got and my friends got. And inevitably, they were the first 7, 8, 9 WrestleManias. I know the first video I ever owned was WrestleMania 4, and I watched that to death. Not considered a great one, but
no,
I know that Mania inside out. Like,
was that the double tape one?
The double tape one, yeah.
Yeah. Because it was the tournament. Yeah, it was the 14-man tournament.
Yeah, it had the big battle royal and some unknown or reasonably unknown guys, it felt at the time, called Bret Hart, before he'd been given the push, essentially. But because I remember seeing that and going, why isn't everybody going crazy for Bret Hart? And he was still like a bit of a heel at that point. And I liked wrestling for a few years as a kid. And then I just walked away from it some point in the mid-90s and never thought about it again. And then about 3 years ago, my girlfriend said, let's watch Glow, which is a fantastic drama based on a true story about the gorgeous ladies of wrestling. Well worth a watch, whether you're into wrestling or not. It's a fantastic series. And I was watching it going, God, I used to love wrestling as a kid. I'd love to see a bit of old wrestling. And one night, I came in after a few sherries and put on the Royal Rumble 1992, as you mentioned earlier.
Oh, yes. See, it's the best one.
Which I had seen before as a kid, and I just had a whale of a time. And I just started watching a few more matches, and then I think I messaged you and sort of said, I'm getting into wrestling a bit. Is there somewhere where I can watch the old wrestling? And at the time, there was the WWE.
I remember this.
That had everything on. It's now gone, and now we've got a paler comparison on Netflix, but it's available to a wider audience.
Yes, I can see where they've done it.
And I got back in a massive way. In the last 3 years, I've watched thousands and thousands of hours of wrestling. I have a hard drive that is full of basically WWE from the mid-70s to now. I've got loads of WCW, TNA, ECW. I keep a spreadsheet of everything I've watched because there's so much of it. And it has consumed not my every waking hour, but I reckon per week, I watch somewhere between, especially if I'm working from home, somewhere between 10 and 20 hours worth of wrestling, because I just have it on while I'm working from home. And then that's the old stuff. And then the newer stuff, I don't watch it all. I mainly watch for WWE. I watch NXT. I'll sit down and watch that and give it my full attention on the pay-per-view. So this has suddenly taken over my life in a way that I was not expecting to. And as we record this, I've just come back from a wrestling convention for the love of wrestling, meeting wrestlers. So it's not just a passing interest, I don't think.
No. See, once it gets you, it's got you. That's what I mean, you see. It's it always stays there.
Being fans of other things, you sort of follow the developments of it year by year by year. And when people pass away and things like that, and newcomers. And this has been like a system shock where I found out pretty much everybody I used to like is dead. They also had massive careers beyond the bit where they left WWE, and I just went, okay, that's them done in wrestling now, I guess. And there's all this new stuff, and there's so much of it. I mean, it's impossible to consume it all.
Oh, yeah.
I dip in and out of various eras, various things. I've watched all the WrestleManias, all the Royal Rumbles. I'm just working my way through most of the WWE pay-per-views and most of the WCW ones as well. I'm having a great time.
Good. See, well, you should.
Well, I'd be a fool if I wasn't and I was still going.
Yes, if you were sitting there suffering it, kind of going, Jesus, this again.
So today we're going to talk about extended media. So it's really anything that's not the matches. Whether you say the original format is them in an arena or them on TV or them on a pay-per-view, we're not looking at wrestling matches. We're looking at things that have been inspired by the people involved. And the first thing we're going to do is a thing called Wrestling's Bloopers, Bleeps And Bodyslams. Now, the exact release date of this is unknown, but it came out at some point in 1985. It was the first WWF, as it was known then, video. Its catalogue number is WF001, but there was also a video called Best of WWF and Hulkamania released at the same time. So, what's happening in the world of wrestling at the time? Pay-per-view wise, we've got WWF's own The War to Settle the Score. Bill Watts' Mid-South Wrestling debuts on TBS. Saturday night's Main Event debuts on NBC. The Wrestling Classic, a sort of tournament event, happened and was won by Junkyard Dog. And then on the 1st of March that year was the first ever WrestleMania, where Hulk Hogan and Mr. T defeated Paul Orndorff and Rowdy Roddy Piper. Notable WWF debuts that year, Terry Funk and Macho Man Randy Savage. Notable debuts in other leagues, but making their first appearances, Virgil. We all love Virgil.
Oh, gotta love a bit of Virg.
Big Van
yes.
Vader, Lex Luger,
Brilliant.
Chris Benoit, Sting, and the Ultimate Warrior. More on him later.
Yes.
And the pilot episode for Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling program is taped at the Riviera Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, Nevada, which, ties nicely back to why I'm here now.
The list you've given there is kind of testament to this period of time in American wrestling. Because, we had the territory system. For anyone that doesn't know wrestling, in America anyway, they used to have what was called the territory system, which is basically like a collection. Each company would operate in like 1 or 2, maybe 3 states, and that would be their territory. And, no other companies would broadcast in that area. It was all ruled by a organization called the NWA, the National Wrestling Alliance, who would decide effectively on whoever was going to be the champion of the entirety of America. And they would then be like loaned out to different companies. If one company was struggling, they would go, oh, well, here's the world champion to visit, your league for like a month, and you can get the ticket sales off the world champion being in your territory. Vince McMahon was in the process of absolutely crushing that to bits, having bought the WWF from his dad. So they were based in New York, hence the first WrestleMania at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
He was essentially stealing talent from other territories.
Which was a no-no before that, right?
Yes, it was a big no-no. It was a big kind of thing. You don't go behind the backs. And his dad had promised, Vince Sr. had promised the rest of the NWA that he would not be competing against them and would never try and take over them. And there was always this kind of like quiet, kind of gentlemanly agreement that existed between everyone, that they were all just going to operate in their own pockets, help each other out when they need it, but not trample on each other's toes. Vince comes along, says, fuck that, and essentially starts slowly crushing companies around him, buying them out when they were desperate, and then appearing on that week's television show. When someone was expecting, Mid-South Wrestling, suddenly they had Vince McMahon from New York on their screen, and it was like, kind of going, oh God, what's this arsehole doing? And then that is how the WWF came to be. They essentially trampled over everyone else.
Yeah. And it becomes this massive organisation from what we know now. But even we talk about SummerSlam 92, which happened in the UK. It was everywhere at that point when I was a kid. You couldn't move for it. That Christmas, the shops were full of wrestling toys. And then, later in the Attitude Era. And it's hard to sort of say that, there isn't quite a comparison in, film or television of, just how huge this organisation became globally, which was essentially, at one point, a regional thing.
Yeah, it was a regional backwater thing, because, wrestling was used to being in, dusty halls and sports auditoriums in front of probably an older audience. And as I'll talk about later when we do other parts of this podcast, that was changing. And Vince, I think, was trying to make it into much more of a family thing, and was also trying to make it much more of a kind of pop culture thing.
Yeah.
Which is why at WrestleMania 1, you get Cyndi Lauper involved.
Yeah.
Because she was on MTV at the time. MTV was a relatively new idea as well. And that's what they wanted. They wanted wrestling to break away from that kind of dark gym hall thing into this sort of, multimedia entertainment product, which has worked its way to where it is today.
Yeah. And they were the first ones really to do big spectacle, weren't they? Their shows had amazing lighting rigs and things like that, and pyrotechnics and stuff. So even if it was a dingy, dark event space somewhere, they made it look amazing and bright and exciting, and made it look like Saturday night television, which is why you get Saturday night's main event and you get the big pay-per-views like WrestleMania.
I mean, I say on Conquistabores, we did do the review of the AWA Wrestle Rock in 1986, which I think was AWA's kind of dying breath attempt at doing their version of WrestleMania. But you can absolutely see where it's night and day, the comparison between the two, because they have nothing of the outside of wrestling. They have nothing of the pop culture. It's just basically all the people they have left. Now Hulk Hogan's gone.
Is that the one where it's in a bright stadium?
Yeah.
The cameras never really get near the ring, and people come down to no music, and so
there's no aisle. They enter through the crowd.
Yeah.
There's only 2 people get music.
Yeah.
They enter the ring. It's still kind of the presentation hasn't really advanced.
Yeah.
They've just tried to put it in a much bigger arena.
Yeah.
And it really didn't work in comparison to a WrestleMania 1, which was this blockbuster event and presented as such.
Hot for TV. This is Gorilla Monsoon speaking to you from WWF Video Control. When you have such extraordinary athletes as we do here in the world of professional wrestling, superstars that can literally fly in and out of that squared circle, and then take these same individuals and place them in a television studio along with their colorful managers, the result is not only action and excitement, sometimes it's absolutely outrageous. Here in the official WWF home video series, which we've named Wrestling's Bloopers, Bleeps And Bodyslams, you'll be treated to a collection of hilarious surprises. Surprises that can only come to you from the stars of the World Wrestling Federation.
So, this first thing, this Wrestling Bloopers, Bleeps And Bodyslams. Now, I suggested this because I had seen this on Daily Motion, I think. I was just looking at the old Coliseum video, or Silvervision, I think it was in the UK, released basically these compilations of WWF wrestling, and they would be, a lot of them they'd essentially be clip shows apart from the big pay-per-views, but with, there'd be new material by one of the hosts or maybe even a wrestler or something like that sort of linked it all together. So this first video, and it is the first, what would you say it is more than what's the concept behind it? I know it says bloopers, body slams, etc., but it's not quite that, is it?
I think it's generally, to be honest, having watched the hour and is it an hour, 20 minutes, hour and a half
Something
of
like
this,
that, yeah.
something like that. I think it's genuinely an hour and 20 minutes of the continual examples of Vince McMahon's sense of humour.
Yeah, which is a very boisterous, some might say bullyish sense of humour that he's been given a platform to share with an audience. I think a lot of the stuff's pulled from a show they had called Tuesday Night Titans.
Yes, it's on Tuesday Night Titans. Yep. Or TNT as it got shortened to.
Which essentially was like a chat show with skits.
Yeah, it was kind of like Vince has a whole career of not wanting to be known as just the wrestling guy, which is why you get this early doors. So it's like Vince tried to do this like chat show thing, and alongside Lord Alfred Hayes, and do little segments that are try to be like funny and ripping the mick out of various things and all this kind of stuff. They desperately tried to get it to be sort of something different because wrestling had at the time, and still kind of does, have this stigma of being just for yeehaw rednecks.
Yeah.
Which, as far as American advertisers go, don't spend any money.
Right.
So this is Vince desperately trying to basically convince advertisers and sponsors, look, this has got this massive audience. And if it requires them drawing them in with some kind of weird late night chat show effort, then that's probably what he was going to do.
Yeah. It's like the Today Show or Jimmy Kimmel or something like that, but with nowhere near the budget. So is it public? It's not quite public access television though, is it? It's like
I don't think so,
a
no.
step up from that. But production values wise, it might as well not be.
Yeah.
Is it representative of what the WWF was at the time?
In the sense that, not for the matches, obviously, but for the characters. I mean, what I was thinking when I watched this was it's a strange halfway house between. I mean, Vince buys the WWF in 1982. This, as we say, is 1985. So he's had 3 years, but he's still got a lot of the people that feature in this. Your Paul Orndorffs, your Tony Atlases, your Wild Samoans are wrestlers who were still involved in the territory system, still involved in the NWA. They are someone else's gimmick. Vince has not quite got the creative cogs going yet. We are 5 years away from Vince having a man wrestle who's supposed to be dead because you can't harm him. We are 2 years away from Ultimate Warrior running down the ring, face paint, tassels, shaking the ropes. And I say we'll talk about him more later. But what I'm saying is a lot of the guys that feature in this as wrestlers are essentially just like bloke in trunks.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no disrespect at all to Paul Orndorff, no disrespect at all to Tony Atlas, people like that. But that's essentially what they're presented as. It's like going, here's a wrestler, he's a guy, here's a guy in his trunks. That's it. We're miles away from here's a wrestling clown.
Yeah.
No, this kind of stuff.
There's two types of wrestler in this, isn't there? There is the guys in trunks and the people with some sort of ethnicity that's used as a gimmick. That's what it feels like.
Yes, racially a bit dodgy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of dodginess in this. And I think it's quite interesting culturally where wrestling's at, where society's at as well, because this is being broadcast on television. So someone somewhere is going, yeah, that's fine. So let's jump into some of the clips of the things that work.
Early doors, we have the romantic advice from classy Freddie Blassie.
Dear TNT, my husband and I enjoy TNT very much. However, it presents a problem. On the nights it's shown, my husband enjoys your show so much that he won't pay any attention at all to me after the show is over. Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah. He doesn't pay any attention to her, huh?
Apparently not, no.
Has a woman tried taking a bath? Using underarm deodorant?
Mr. Blassie, please.
Shaving under the armpits? Shaving her legs? You goofy broad, that's what you gotta do!
It doesn't say anything at all about that in here, please.
Well, he's not paying attention to her, so that's the reason why.
Obviously, the problem is TNT. That's the problem. He enjoys the show so much that apparently that's all he can
Well,
keep
he
in mind.
should enjoy TNT. But she's sitting there, too. You ought to enjoy a little bit of her, too. Maybe his sheets are dirty.
Which, yeah, there's a kind of joke somewhere about how the people have to write in to, and it happens not just with Freddie Blassie. There's a few other segments with this kind of idea that go on later on with different people, like Lou Albano and things like that. And it's like, the first one with Freddie Blassie is, my husband practices wrestling moves on me in the bedroom. And there's a lot of like kind of schoolboy snickering going on in the background. Then you get Freddie Blassie, who just straight face kind of goes, well, maybe the broad just needs hit.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, God.
And then he's like telling them to take a bath and shave their legs and things like that, to be a good wife. Somebody somewhere thinks it's funny. And I mean, it's amusing in a very sort of cringe way now. But bizarre.
It's very, very odd. And what I noticed as well is the fact it was still in that age of wrestling where managers were a thing,
Yeah.
Freddie Blassie, manager, Lou Albano, a manager as well. And it's very much because, wrestlers themselves, again, perhaps just came from the territory system, weren't used to television.
Yeah.
So weren't used to staying in front of a TV camera and talking. So you would get like one person that could do that, and then they would look after, 5 or 6 different wrestlers. And there's a lot of that goes on here. Freddie Blassie will just talk with his distinctive voice, which fact fans from the later WF may remember from all the promo videos from the Attitude Era at the start of the pay-per-views. That was Freddie Blassie voicing them.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah, if you get any sort of pay-per-view from 97 about 99, when you get the opening video package, you get a deep-voiced guy kind of go, who will Stone Cold Feet? That's Freddie Blassie.
Wow,
it's the same guy.
I did not know that. You're right, because a lot of the wrestlers in this are really uncharismatic. They could not cut a promo in the way that we know it now to save their lives. Even someone like Hogan, who appears on this, isn't quite... I know he's huge at this time, like in the full swings of Hulkamania, but he hasn't quite got the charisma that I've known him from the promos for various pay-per-views over the year.
Yeah.
The set that they're giving this romantic advice from, though, is horrendous. It's like this weird grey wall, and it's like someone's just stapled bits of like fabric to it, but it's like it's all scrunched up, and it's like there's to a lot of this, there's a real this'll do attitude.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's then bizarre that they've gone, this is the best we've got to show on our first ever video compilation.
It's just for the set, you're talking about the cardboard love heart.
Yes.
That looks like something like, it would be on a Valentine's card sent to you by someone you really did not want a relationship with.
The stuff I do like, I'm a sucker for a bit of Lord Alfred Hayes, who's this British commentator and interviewer, and he's genuinely dreadful, but in the most endearing possible way. There's various things where he's got to try Hulk Hogan's new protein shake. The Samoans are making him eat some raw fish or a fish's head. There's pizza making, and at one point he gets flour on his face, and Vince goes, "Oh, you got some white powder on your nose. It's not the first time I've seen that." And everybody sort of sniggers because it was the 80s.
I noticed that. It's like, bloody hell. Jesus.
I don't know why, but I think of lots of those people doing coke, but I've never thought of Lord Alfred Hayes as...
No, but I often think when you see Lord Alfred Hayes in these older videos, I often kind of wonder, it's like he's such a kind of like upper class British sort of like almost nobility about him, as the name would imply, that's his character. But it's you kind of think, how the hell did he end up here?
Yeah.
At what point did he decide? It's just like, we just got this British guy in, we'll do occasional commentary, because he was on everything at that point in time.
I'd love to know his life before wrestling, but I feel like sometimes Vince just sees someone and goes, that's the guy I need. There's those early episodes of Raw where they have that comedian hosting whose name escapes me, and he knows nothing about wrestling. And it feels like Vince just saw this guy like in a comedy club somewhere and went, you're the guy we need to take this, to new levels. And he just doesn't get it. And I feel like there was a bit of that with Lord Alfred Hayes. Maybe he was a commentator on other sports or something and ended up in the world of sports entertainment, but God
possibly
love Lord Alfred Hayes.
Oh, yes. I also think in this he plays... Vince needs a fall guy for his humour to work. That's you said earlier on it was bullying, and it is.
Yeah.
Because every 5 minutes there's like, he's Vince egging Lord Alfred on to try the fish guts that the Wild Samoans have served up in this coconut shell. Or it's, him, talking about the white powder. Him trying to get Lord Alfred to sample Hulk Hogan's python powder, which is an interesting way of putting it. When Lord Alfred Hayes was gone, Vince would go on and probably replace Lord Alfred Hayes with JR, Jim Ross, in this estimate. Because how the hell Jim Ross didn't leave long before he did, I will never know. Because this is a man who Jim Ross once had suspected bowel cancer, and while he was away getting this checked out, Vince had a whole angle on Raw where he had a plastic arse that he was then performing a colonoscopy on.
Jesus. I mean, he is vile. Like, Jake the Snake was dealing with alcoholism, and so they write it into the plot of his wrestling, and somebody from, who's it, Jerry the King Lawler, forcing booze down his neck and stuff like that.
Yep. Jake had agreed to do that segment on the proviso that the bottle contained cold tea.
Yeah, because he's a recovering alcoholic.
As he's a recovering alcoholic. As a jolly Jake with the lads, they didn't bother getting the tea, and they just gave it whiskey instead.
It's absolutely I mean, there are many stories about Vince, and there's a whole documentary series on Netflix that only sort of touches the sides, but well worth watching whether you're into wrestling or not.
Indeed.
That's kind of the good stuff on... What about the bad stuff? I mean, perhaps the worst thing for me is there's a wrestler called Kamala who is supposed to be like an African tribes person, and he eats off-screen, but essentially eats a live chicken on air because that's what African tribes people do, according to the WWF. Yes.
It's bizarre to think that Kamala would still be in the WWF in 1992. But anyway, when you look at the character of Kamala, he's actually at the AWA Wrestle Rock, like I said before. He's got a match at that as well. I think it's against Sergeant Slaughter, if I remember rightly. But it's like, you look at that gimmick at the AWA, and it's literally just him with the, dressed in the sort of tiger skin, like cloth and this kind of stuff, with the spear and the shield.
Yeah.
And you think to yourself, wow, that's really racist. And then you get Vince going, no, wait, how can we make it more racist? Which, when he was in the WWF, you had him led by a white guy, Harvey Whippleman. And then you also had his handler, who was a guy called Kim Chi, who had a white mask on and a pith helmet, like they just got him out of the jungle. Yeah. So this is probably, it's really bad, and it's so fucking culturally insensitive. But it gets worse.
So Kamala, he's from the South, right? If I remember correctly, like in terms of his heritage. So it's also not a thing of like this guy reclaiming his roots or something like that, or his African heritage and using it as a powerful character piece. This does feel like culturally inappropriate, even though it's a black guy doing it, because it's not even anything to do with Africa, and ultimately the white guy in charge is calling the shots and going, let's do this because this is what, African tribes people are like.
Exactly. It's just cringe at best, downright offensive at worst.
Yeah, absolutely. What else do we get in here? We get Lou Albano giving health advice. Lou, big dude, looks like a dirty, dirty man.
Yeah, Captain Lou. I mean, he's a man who's trying to make rubber bands in his beard a fashion choice.
Yeah, bizarre.
And he was also riding on certain fame of being friends with Cyndi Lauper, so he's in the Girls Just Want to Have Fun video.
Yeah.
Plays her father.
Yeah, because that's the whole time of, this is the rock and wrestling era, isn't it? And as you say, they were trying to get into MTV and things like that. And so there's a big crossover there. We get an interview with Andre the Giant where he says he's going to do the fish song and then just does an impression of a fish, which everybody finds hilarious.
Yep. Everyone finds absolutely hilarious and falls about laughing, which, okay, if you've got like a guy who's legitimately like 7'2", doing and has hands that could probably literally crush your head, then you probably will laugh out of politeness if nothing else.
It's one of the least offensive jokes on there, so, you know.
Oh, yes. This is true. This is true.
I mean, we were talking about a lack of charisma. Andre imposing in the ring and has had a great career, but he's starting to wind down at this point because his sort of physical health isn't where it was. But he is not a charming man on the microphone at all.
No, not particularly. He's very much to the point, is Andre. I do feel kind of sorry for Andre the Giant because the kind of touring from his career in wrestling absolutely did him in physically. Yeah. It wasn't just the in-ring stuff that did Andre in, it was the travel as well, because airlines were not designed to facilitate a 7'2" man who weighed north of about 400 pounds.
Yeah.
You know, who just had giantism. That was, you know, he suffered from it. He had, you know, his body produced too much growth hormone. And, you know, so there was stuff like that. I mean, there's always the story when Andre the Giant did The Princess Bride, which I'm assuming you've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. You know the bit at the end where he has to cat the princess, played by Robin Wright. And Robin Wright always tells the story that at that stage in his life, even though she is like a feather in comparison to him, he still needed a back support. He needed a back brace for the impact.
Wow.
And that's just bizarre.
There is a real thing when you watch those sort of mid to late 80s and early 90s matches. You're very aware that this man is not doing an awful lot. They're trying to, because he's a big star and he's their big heel.
Absolutely.
He's their big bad guy in the company by WrestleMania 2, is it? I think. When's the first?
3 is when he turns heel at 3.
Yeah. So,
because he's got Hogan in the main event and he's WrestleMania 4 against Hogan as well in the first round. But I think from 5 onwards, I can't remember what he did at 5. Is that the one where he's with Haku in the tag team and he doesn't really do much because Haku does all the work?
Yeah.
And I think by 6, he's pretty much done.
Yeah. And those early Survivor Series as well, like he is barely in the ring. And when he shows up in the Rumbles as well, like his body is just screwed. And, you know, a lot of the people within this video and beyond, the 80s and 90s wrestlers, they didn't fare too well health-wise.
No.
But there we go. So we have got Mean Gene Okerlund on the streets of New York. Who's he with?
Adrian Adonis and Dick Murdoch.
I don't know, Dick Murdoch, what do you make of it all? This is the Big Apple.
Well, I'll tell you what, Gene, I don't know. My house, when I was born, we lived on 1,700 sprawling acres of land. I can't believe it.
Is this Aunt Sophie?
How you doing?
Hi, how are you today?
Very good.
Do you know Adrian Adonis, World Tag Team Champion?
No.
Well, he grew up in this neighborhood. Have you lived here long?
All my life. I never saw him.
Wait a minute, Adrian Adonis. Do you know this lady? I thought this was Aunt Sophie.
No,
Maybe a case of mistaken identity. That's quite obvious. Hold it, there's somebody up there.
All right, get back in the house. Get back in the house. Get back in the house.
Is that somebody you know?
How about Smiley?
Hey, what is this? Just a second, sir.
Uncle Joe.
Uncle Joe.
Uncle Joe. Uncle Joe.
Is this
How are you?
Uncle Joe, how are you doing today?
Terrific.
Terrific. You look good.
He does.
Be Vice President Chase Manhattan in the morning, but I forgot which branch.
Always quick in the morning.
Yes,
Always
I'll
quick
tell
in
you,
the morning.
that's good. You don't have it
He's
all.
good for 53, doesn't he?
53?
Yeah. That's quite a bizarre segment.
Yeah, it's kind of like they seem to just walk around the place, try and order hot dogs, which they then ask if they are American hot dogs or if they've been imported. They look fucking rank anyway.
Yeah.
So, you know, it is not a sort of thing you go, oh, yeah, I'll buy that for $1. No, I will not. And they seem to just like try and pretend that they've come from this tough New York neighborhood.
Yeah.
Or at least I think it's Adrian Adonis is pretending that he's from this New York neighborhood. I think Dick Murdoch's very much, country boy
Yeah.
throughout the whole thing. I don't know why they're together. But then you've got Gene Okerlund once again playing this straight guy, just kind of going, oh, yeah, well, this is very strange. Look, there's people leaning out of windows claiming that they know you. And, it's obviously some crack den somewhere that they've happened upon in some back street somewhere, and they're trying to sort of like make out that it's my family home. It's just so strange.
It's very odd, especially when you see it all collected together here. I can imagine on a weekly basis, if you've got 3 minutes of this, you go, oh, that was a bit weird. But then you've got a decent interview, a couple of clips from matches and stuff, and everybody gets their fill. But condensed here into one volume, it is bizarre. It's a real insight into how Vince saw the industry and what he thought was funny and his bizarre sense of humour. And obviously it climaxes with a wedding.
Yes. Well, a wedding in inverted commas.
Yeah, so it's not a real wedding. I did look, just because it's not unlike the WWF, WWE, to bring people's real-life partners in and get them involved in storylines. And it should be said, give them paid work, you know?
Yeah. Well, the biggest wedding, as far as the WWF goes, around about this time, maybe a little bit later on, was SummerSlam 91, which was Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth, who were actually genuinely married years beforehand, but just kind of like renewed their vows at SummerSlam.
Yeah, because it was a good story.
Yeah, and that was it. That was the match made in heaven, and obviously the match made in hell was the main event, Hogan and Warrior teaming up.
But this wedding...
It's the wedding, if I remember rightly, of Mad Dog Vachon.
It descends into like a food fight and then a sort of wrestle, like a bit of a fight, and it's in a studio that gets pulled apart, and people throw cakes around, and it's just a really shit bit of television.
It goes on for about 25 minutes as well.
Yeah.
The joke is done after 5 minutes. You know, once you've got George the Animal Steele trying to make a speech, but the joke is that he's an animal and he can't really talk.
Yeah.
Lou Albano literally spends 2 minutes burping into a microphone.
Yeah.
Like your literal drunk uncle at a wedding.
Yeah, he plays that role well.
Yeah, if it was like a real life wedding, you'd kind of just put your hands delicately around and go, "Do you not just want to go to bed now, Lou? just get yourself up the stairs, back to your room. It'll be fine. The hotel staff are looking worried." There's actually I think the politically correct term is small person.
Yeah.
But they would use the term midget during this. Who doesn't look at the camera, ever.
Yeah.
There's a whole bit where he's got a microphone and he's trying to sing a song, but he's got his back to the camera, so you can't actually see who the fuck he is.
Yeah.
There's a moment where, I can't remember the name of the guy who's the obvious heel in this, who tells Vince to get stuffed, basically.
Yeah.
And he ends up throwing cake in Paul Vachon's wife's face. Paul Vachon is standing right next to him and doesn't give a fuck. Just literally goes, there we are. Wife's covered in cake now on their wedding day. You know, because women are traditionally, obviously, perfectly fine with having their wedding dress ruined on their wedding day.
Absolutely. It's what they love.
It's what they absolutely love. They don't go crazy at all about that one.
Especially if you marry into the WWF.
Yes. Also, as a side note, during the food fight, I noticed no one is throwing any cake at them Samoan boys.
No.
No. For people who don't know and aren't into wrestling, Samoan wrestlers are widely regarded as some of the genuinely hardest nuts in the business. Like, as in, will take you in a real fight. So, you know, the Wild Samoans get away scot-free with having no cake thrown their way, because everyone knows if they did that, they would be battered.
They will pull their eyes out.
Yes.
So the title is Bloopers, Bleeps And Bodyslams. Now, I don't really think there's that many bloopers here. It's just live telly going a bit wrong, but also it's supposed to go wrong. Even like, you know, they bring a camel in the studio for hilarity with the Iron Sheik, and no one seems to know what a camel is. But there's not even like a blooper where the camel shits on the floor or anything. Everyone's just going, God, it really smells.
No, not really.
Alfred, now, what's your opinion of this animal?
Well, firstly, there is a most peculiar aroma.
Yes, I think we know what camel breath is all about. Now, we see these rather protruding lips. Now, is this a normal-looking camel, or does this camel have some sort of growth or extraordinary I think he's moving.
Well,
I didn't mean it.
no.
I didn't mean to offend you.
To kiss you.
This camel is very gentleman. Camel, a lot even gentleman than soldier slaughter. Never a spit, never kick. He's a very polite, very intelligent. Whatever I tell him, he do it. We go together, jog, work hard. He can stay 3 days, 4 days without water, without anything. That's because he is a tough like the Iron Sheik.
Bleeps. Yeah, sure. I'm sure there's some swearing or something. Body slams. We get a minute amount of wrestling in this. Is there anything notable?
I think there's, for like people looking back in the modern day and looking back at this, you do get a match where the Wild Samoans lose the tag team titles to Soul Man Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas.
Right.
And the names might not mean anything to people who don't know much about wrestling, but Soul Man Rocky Johnson is Dwayne Johnson's dad. That's your kind of only real major connection to modern wrestling in this in any great way, apart from Vince, obviously.
Yeah.
And a little bit of Hogan. It would have been nice to see the whole match, but no, because we've got camels to look at.
Yeah. And there's the hilarious moment from a match where someone runs into Andre the Giant's bum and the crowd lose their shit over it. It's the funniest thing they've ever seen.
Yep, and it's 10-man tag with no name, so you've no idea who the hell's in it. I believe they say, it's like being hit by an 18-wheeler. It's like he's just literally ran into his backside. Yeah. That's all he's done.
I know what I would rather run into. If I'm going to choose a truck or a large man's ass, one is going to be a lot more comfortable than the other.
Yes.
Is there anything else we want to say on this one?
I just wrote down here on my notes, is like going, who exactly is this for? Because fans don't get anything out of it. The matches are only ever in highlights, so it's not as if you'll tune in for any wrestling action. It just feels like a lot of private backstage stuff that probably should have just stayed there.
Yeah, like the only thing I can think of is it for the dads. The kids enjoy the wrestling and the big characters, and these are the bits, the naughty bits, that the dads like from Tuesday Night Titans. I don't know, but even so.
Maybe. Well, obviously now we have the whole thing that, every single wrestler's got an X account or TikTok or whatever, or Instagram, and that's how they kind of communicate to a wider fan base. Whereas this is in a time when kayfabe was still very much in vogue. Kayfabe is the name given to the art of keeping wrestling appear real to an outside audience. It's part of the deception. And, you would have had it still upheld at this point in time because these wrestlers would have seen, the moment that an audience clicked on that it wasn't real, the worry was that the entire industry would fall down overnight.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't be making any money anymore, which was a legitimate fear at the time.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, it's kayfabe's kind of dead now. It's seen as much more of a, you're acting a role and that's perfectly fine. It's like any other TV show or film. But this was probably your first example of actually seeing anything beyond them being in a wrestling ring.
Yeah.
Maybe. And that's maybe a kind of sort of slightly special part about it.
I've seen a fair amount of the weekly shows from the era, and there are storylines. They're not quite at the point they'll be by the end of the 80s, but that, people are cutting promos and having feuds and falling out. But it's almost like this is the beginning of them bringing more, as you said, not just his gimmicks, but more personality to the stars of the show to make them stars beyond just the athletes that they are.
Yeah, exactly.
So we must rate this, as we must rate all things. Is it a clanger, a banger, or an average meander?
Gonna have to say clanger.
Yeah. It clangs very hard, but the reason that I wanted to do it is just because I think it is bizarre, but it's also showing the beginnings of like a company trying to become narrative focused in a way and trying to find their place within the market that isn't just the sports entertainment and going more into the entertainment. And fundamentally, it doesn't work. It's a bizarre choice for a first video. I'm glad it came out with the best moments and a video on Hulkamania. Because
they make far more sense, yeah.
Yeah, but there we go.
Too hot for TV.
The next thing we are going to look at is a cartoon called Hulk Hogan's Rock and Roll Wrestling. and a little episode that there's 2 episodes. There's 2 stories per episode, and these ones are called The Duke of Piperton and Robin Hulk and His Merry Wrestlers. This was first broadcast on CBS on October 12th, 1985. So same year as the previous ones. Have you seen the show before at any point in your life?
I had a bizarre memory of seeing this at one point. I think, this was on the WWE network.
Yes, it was.
So I seem to remember out of sheer morbid curiosity. It wasn't this episode, but just watching an episode of Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling because it was there, and I was like, oh, when you had that moment of the WWE Network first coming out in like 2014, and you were a bit like, I've paid £10 a month, and this has got loads of stuff on it, and you watch everything. Yeah. And this was one of my everything moments of just sitting there with a cup of coffee watching, and going, yeah, I'll watch a shonky 1980s animated cartoon about Hulk Hogan. Why not?
So I can't say for sure when this first came to the UK, but it was definitely broadcast in the early 90s because I remember seeing some of it and being very excited that there was a wrestling cartoon, but also not knowing who half the characters were because by, say it was 92, the only person really still in the promotion is Hulk and maybe Piper at that point. I think Piper's still about.
Piper was hanging around in 92, yeah.
Yeah. And even the videos I'm getting of like earlier WrestleManias only feature some of these people peripheral, like Junkyard Dog still about. But then they don't feel like headline wrestlers at that point that they probably would have been when you were doing lots of house shows and weekly shows and things like that. So they're all people towards the end of their WWF career in the 90s if they haven't already left. So I remember thinking it being a bit bizarre. And I mean, one of the criticisms of it at the time, and even more so in the 90s, is because of how long it takes to do animation, it doesn't keep up with the who are the good guys, who are the bad guys, you know?
No, not at all.
We haven't said this, but we should say the good guys are called baby faces and the bad guys are called heels. So,
heels.
And quite often a baby face does a heel turn or vice versa. So this cartoon basically pitches Hulk Hogan's group of people together, then Roddy Piper's group of wrestlers, and each week they have crazy adventures and get into all sorts of japes.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
There was a couple of seasons of it. I'm almost certain I didn't see more than a handful of the episodes, and I imagine it disappeared pretty quickly and I forgot all about it. Is it a good cartoon?
I think you're trying to, measure it up alongside other stuff that would have been around at the time, or, before that. I mean, it ain't no Flintstones. That's all I'm saying. It ain't no Jetsons, and it ain't as funny as anything Bugs Bunny's done. So,
yeah,
probably not.
No, it's cheap, tie-in, short. I can imagine kids loved it, but again, forgot all about it. So, the first story, The Duke of Piperton. Now, listeners may detect a slight Scottish twang to your accent. So
yes, slightly.
This deals with your cultural heritage.
It does. It could be seen as offensive. It's like we eat raw chickens or something.
So what happens in this one?
Well, Roddy Piper, who, let's face it, in real life was Canadian. Bless him. I mean, we'll take him as a representation of Scotland, but he was Canadian. He ends up being told that he has the birthright to a dukedom in Scotland, and he gets a castle and the whole grounds as a result. And so him and his heel bunch all mosey on out to Scotland to claim this castle, including getting squished by the drawbridge at one point upon their entrance of a kind of comedy style. And he then has to fight a knight in a jousting contest, which is later revealed to in a kind of weird example of 1980s misogyny when Roddy Piper loses, that he lost to a woman.
Besides, there's nothing to be ashamed about losing to a tough guy like you.
Right ya are, Roddy, old boy.
Incredible! Roddy Piper has just lost to a girl. What do you have to say about that, Mr. Piper?
Shocking, absolutely shocking.
I know. How dare he? What an insult is masculinity.
I know, such a fantastic plot twist there. It's a bizarre little thing. It doesn't do much for Scottish accents, though, does it?
No, not at all. I was going to say, Roddy Piper is voiced by Charlie Adler.
Right.
Who's also the voice of Buster Bunny in Tiny Toon Adventures.
Ah.
And he's also, weirdly, more recently, Starscream in the Michael Bay Transformers movies.
Wow. Well, look at that. That's a great career as a voice actor, to be honest.
Oh, yeah. There's talent in this. There is absolutely talent in this to spare. As far as the voices go.
His particular voice, though, he doesn't even attempt to do a Scottish accent, it feels like, Piper.
No, he doesn't even attempt to do a Roddy Piper accent.
Yeah.
Which is even weirder.
Because Roddy Piper's accent sounds like someone who has heard somebody do an impression of an Irish person and thought that's what a Scottish person sounded like. It doesn't really work, but at least he's trying to do something. It's that Scotty in Star Trek thing of, it's kind of endearing, but also someone coming new to it would find it offensive. But then the rest of the Scottish accents in this are shocking.
Oh, yeah, they're absolutely terrible.
Good afternoon. You must be Roddy Piper.
Duke Piper, if you please. You must be my butler.
Hardly. I'm the lawyer for your great-uncle's estate. I'm sorry to say it, but you're not a duke as yet. Your distant cousin, Ronnie Piper, has made a claim on the estate. In accordance with the ancient Piperton tradition, Ronnie has challenged you to a joust.
You mean the kind with horses and suits of armor?
Exactly. Winner gets the castle.
No sweat. I'll cream him. And you guys can help me make sure of it.
Yes, they are that kind of weird, kind of almost like pre-Shrek Scottish accents. So just like that every single American actor seems to try and attempt at.
Yeah.
And, you know, they really overload it and just kind of keep going. I like this, laddie. And it's, oh, no.
The problem is, because you're actually Scottish, you make that sound too good.
Yeah, well, you know, it's just got to lean into it.
It's offensively bad, and I'm not even Scottish, and I'm offended for the Scottish people.
Well, this is, yes, well, you should be. Independence now.
You were going to say about the other voices in this, because there are some good voices, aren't there?
There are some, yeah, there's a lot of going. James Avery is the voice of Junkyard Dog in this as well, and people might wonder, who's James Avery? He was the voice of Shredder in the 1989 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon, but he's also Uncle Phil in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Iconic.
Exactly. Hulk Hogan is voiced by Brad Garrett, who also voiced Eeyore in the live-action Christopher Robin movie with Ewan McGregor.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
Yep. And he's also, in weird kind of Ninja Turtles thing again, he's also Krang in the Michael Bay Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies. So I was just looking, it's weird how Ninja Turtles and Michael Bay seem to come into this a lot.
Maybe Michael Bay was a young kid watching this and was just noting, like, what a great voice
Possibly.
that guy's got.
And also going, why aren't more things exploding?
Now, look, for a lot of people here, they're used to us doing sci-fi on this podcast, and this is not sci-fi. But the second story in this episode, which is called Robin Hulk and His Merry Wrestlers, involves time travel and going into the past, where Robin Hulk, you can see what they've done there, it's Robin Hood
yes,
and his merry men. Hulk Hogan goes to see Lou Albano's uncle or something like that.
Uncle's, who's an inventor, and he and Lou Albano and Wendy Richter, who by the time this cartoon came out, by the way, had already left. They'd left, talking about it being out of date when it came out. They go and end up in his time machine.
Yeah.
Which is this big, massive, like, metal tent thing in the corner of the room. And Hulk, being the klutz he is, ends up whacking one of the levers and ends up travelling back in time to Nottingham Forest and ends up doing Prince of Thieves long before Kevin Costner ever thought of it.
Yeah, with an accent as about as convincing as Kevin Costner's.
Yes.
So, you know, I'll go with it. This one's a bit more fun. I can imagine 7-year-old me being quite excited by it.
Oh, yeah.
It turns out in the end that actually it wasn't a time machine. It was just an extravagant machine for telling the time. And like Hulk had just hit his head or something and had a dream.
Or it's another one of those Hulk Hogan stories that seem to be, you know, true in his own head, but you have to kind of like any kind of like scrutiny it falls down on. It's maybe the same machine that when he made that claim that he wrestled 400 nights a year one year because he was going back and forth to America and Japan and he lost time.
Yeah.
And was sometimes wrestling 3 times in one day as a result of the flights and the time difference. So it's maybe the same thing. It's maybe Lou Albano's uncle's time machine that got him there.
While we're here, let's talk about Hulk Hogan and Hulkamania, because he's the lead face of this. He's the lead name, and he was everywhere in the 80s and up to sort of the mid-90s. He was like he has a good decade run, I think, as the face of wrestling, even when he's gone to other promotions and stuff like that.
I think it's fair to say from an outside point of view, yes, Hulk Hogan was from 84 through to probably 91, 92 at the height of his Hulkamania popularity.
Yeah.
Wrestling fans themselves were kind of sick of his shtick. To go back to the 92 Rumble, it was the first example, when you look back on it, of WWE sweetening the sound. Because when Sid Vicious pulls Hogan over the top rope and Flair eliminates him, live, the crowd absolutely go mental and celebrate.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously that's not what the WWF wanted to put across. They would put, hero Hulk Hogan. So they had to dull the sound down for all the cheering that was going on when Flair... People were ecstatic that Flair won, even though he was supposed to be the heel. Hogan would then leave the WWF in 93. His last match in the WWF was at King of the Ring in 93 against Yokozuna, where he couldn't really be bothered doing any live promos to hype the match because he was too busy filming Thunder in Paradise.
Great. That and Suburban Commando, top tier.
Yep. A big, massive boat. Him and his mates in a big boat with guns on. And then he leaves famously for WCW in 94, which was a big coup for WCW at the time. WCW then spend effectively 2 years trying to just do the usual Hulk Hogan formula of, we will sign Big Bad Man and Hogan will then be brutalized by Big Bad Man, but will then come back a few months later and beat him in a match straight and clean, and so who cares? Rinse and repeat. It does lead to a triple-decker cage match with him and Randy Savage.
One of the worst matches of all time.
Yeah, it's awful. It's, oh God, what show is it? Is it Fall Brawl 95?
WCW Uncensored in 1996.
96, right, okay, Christ. Only a few months after that, at Bash at the Beach 96, Hulk Hogan turns heel and ends up leg dropping Randy Savage and becoming the third man alongside Scott Hall and Kevin Nash in the New World Order in WCW, which, looking back, I don't think people will realise how much of a big deal that was in wrestling at the time.
I'm going to disagree with you slightly there, in that. So my view of Hulk Hogan was the outsider's point of view, not the outsiders, but
Yeah.
So coming back to it a few years ago and actually seeing his decline, which I hadn't noticed as a 10-year-old, and then finding out his career continued into WCW and going, oh, this is all right, but not as good. When I watched that heel turn, it remains, I think, one of the moments that really grabbed me and made me go, I need to know all about. So I think it still stands the test of time as like a shocking moment. And for there are ups and downs of the NWO that's formed out of that from there, and it goes on far too long. But
exactly.
There's key points in that timeline, and it's a great reinvigoration of Hogan's career as a heel, because it's just him as a person, you would think he'd never actually want to do it.
No, he didn't. That's the story. They had to have Sting ready on standby to do it.
Yeah.
Just in case Hogan packed out. Hogan was so paranoid about if he turned heel, he would lose merchandise money from his t-shirts and sales and things like that, and any other merchandise he was doing, which was a lot. Then he would probably, he was worried that all that would disappear overnight because he'd be the bad guy, and who the hell would want to buy a t-shirt for the bad guys?
Yeah.
But as it was with the NWO, it was believable as well from the point of view that Kevin Nash and Scott Hall had recently come across in the WWF.
Yeah.
So when they were talking about they'd brought a third guy with them, it made absolute sense for it to be another guy who came across in the WWF just before they did. And it meant that Hogan had this massive boost to his career of being, he turned heel for the first, mainly the first time. I think he dabbled in it beforehand before he was famous. And it was a moment of absolute shock that, he walked at the ring, looked like he was going to save, WCW guys from a beatdown. Randy Savage on the deck. Scott Hall and Kevin Nash vacate the ring, and then Hogan just leg drops Savage. Yeah. And then Hall and Nash come back in the ring, high-five him, and then that's the end of your Bash at the Beach 96.
And it's just the last 5-10 minutes is just people throwing rubbish and booing.
Yeah, this cascade of garbage.
It's like the audience want to hurt him. They are so shocked and so disappointed. It wouldn't be the last time that audiences are disappointed with Hulk Hogan, though.
Oh, no.
Because from there, like, WCW carries on and then until it's eventually brought up by WWF, WWE by that point. Hogan goes back to WWE, has another run that isn't that exciting, but there's some moments, and it's very much trading off the nostalgia. So it's him versus some of the big stars of the Attitude Era. And then I think he heads off to TNA, and that's where his career sort of ends. But in that time, the internet happens, and interviews happen, and leaks of various things happen, and it just becomes apparent that Hulk Hogan is a massive prick.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Even when you watch, like, Hogan Knows Best, the sort of weird Osbourne's riff they tried to do for sort of like, behind the scenes of the family, there's incredibly weird and creepy moments, getting very, very, very overprotective about his daughter.
Yeah.
And who she happens to be going out with at the time. And I mean, you'd love to think that was played up for the cameras for a sort of flying the wall documentary with the family, but no. I think that was genuinely the problem. Applying suntan lotion to his daughter's legs.
Yeah.
Which is a bit, I'm sorry, I beg your pardon. And he was also taped when Brooke Hogan was going out with an American basketball player who was black. Hogan was rather famously picked up on a microphone, giving it the N-word.
Yeah.
And when he was found out and asked about this, he essentially tried to excuse it by saying, "Oh, but that's what everyone in the wrestling business called them when I was coming through." So as if I could have gone, "Oh, well, everyone else did it 20 years ago, so it must be okay." It's just like, no, mate, it's really not.
And from there, you get a sort of spiral down of he comes back to host some WrestleManias, and again, they have to mess with the audio because he's getting active boos. Obviously, he's a big Trump supporter, and then he passes away last year with a legacy sort of in tatters, and his last appearance was on the first Netflix on Raw, where he's promoting his beer. And, it's a good idea for the Netflix generation of this new Netflix launch to go, remember this guy from this era and this guy from this era, which is what they do. But Hulk is booed to fuck on it,
He is out the building. Absolutely booed out the building. And Jimmy Hart, bless him, has to stand there and try and take the barrage.
And, we get other people from the past show up. The Rock shows up and is loved. We get Undertaker show up and, he gets a big pop.
Taker's a massive Republican as well. He's a massive MAGA head and all.
Yeah.
But he doesn't turn up to Trump rallies. No. He's smart enough to know that might damage his career somewhat. So he just kind of quietly becomes a bit of a prick. Whereas Hogan was outright a prick.
Yeah. It's not just his politics, because we can all agree to disagree on politics and what we support and this, that, and the other. But he's a liar and a bigot, ultimately.
Yeah,
and
that's it.
He has screwed over so many people throughout his career. And that was my biggest shock coming back to it, is going, because when I was 10 years old, Hulk Hogan was my hero.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought he was amazing. And I still love peak era Hulk, and I still love hearing his theme tune. And I love the WCW stuff he does. But when you learn about the man, you're like, oh, for fuck's sake. That was the biggest shock.
I often think that Hogan, wrestling as a business, more than anything else, is such a blend of reality and fantasy. The line of the two is very, very wavy and thin sometimes. And Hogan, I think, was just one of the biggest examples of his character overtaking his actual persona.
Yeah.
How much I think Hulk Hogan was a much, much bigger entity in his head than Terry Bollea was.
Yeah.
and he much preferred being Hulk Hogan, and if that meant telling some outlandishly stupid story that is no way real and can easily be sort of crumbled under any kind of scrutiny, then so be it.
And there's little white lies you can tell to sort of propagate your character. Like when he says things like, "Oh, Elvis was a fan," it's a load of bullshit, but I don't mind it. But it's when you stack that up with other things that especially sort of affected other people's careers, then you go, "Oh no, it's just in a long list of lies." Because actually, like a Hulk Hogan saying Elvis was a fan is quite funny. I'll take that.
Elvis died 3 years before Hulk Hogan made his wrestling debut.
Exactly. But at this time, back in 1985, he was a huge star, and he led those first few WrestleManias, and the crowd went off for him. And when I've watched loads of old wrestling, Saturday night main events and things like that, even though it's a smaller crowd, there's almost a bigger pop for him because just everybody goes nuts for him, and he is a star, and he capitalizes on that sort of all-American feeling, that wholesome patriotism that America loves so much to this day. And it's a huge energy, and it felt like such a great Hulkamania was such a big thing in America and across the world. Like I went to see wrestling in like 92, 93 in Birmingham. He wasn't there, but it was full of those foam fingers that said Hulkamania on there, and that's what I walked away with. And the cartoon was just a symptom of it. Like as the rock and wrestling era and Hulkamania entered the mainstream, they took these bizarre characters and turned them into a cartoon, which was a bit of fun for the kids. I don't have a huge amount to say on the cartoon, which is why we've mainly talked about Hulk.
Yeah.
Have you got anything else in your notes?
I think, again, we go back to the idea that this was Vince trying to essentially make wrestling acceptable for, maybe like, for families, basically. They wanted to get the young kids involved, which is why sometimes his brand of wrestling became quite cartoony in a way. It wasn't like, the blood and guts of the NWA and, the serious competitions. Roddy Piper never had a dog collar match with Greg Valentine that ended up with both of them bleeding like stuck pigs in the middle of a canvas ring in the WWF. That was in the NWA.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that wasn't, so there was that. And I think this, like, this cartoon is kind of like, it's trying to get the kids to like go, oh, this wrestling thing looks really, really cool. Let's go watch it when they're next in town. And then they all go as families.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of criticism recently about ticket prices in the WWE.
Mm-hmm.
And it is horrendously expensive now. In the last 10 years, I think WrestleMania tickets are now like 5 times what they were initially, 10 years ago. And a lot of people have kind of whispered that, as shite as a human as Vince is, as we know, there's an element of Vince wouldn't have done that and put the prices up that much pre the TKO takeover because Vince knew that families were kind of the lifeblood of it.
Yeah.
And if you can't afford to take your family to like Monday Night Raw or SmackDown or WrestleMania when it's in town, then who's wrestling for?
Yeah.
So from the point of view of being a promoter, Vince kind of got that part.
Yeah.
And this, I think, is an early part of that. It's Vince trying to, again, expand those boundaries of wrestling and get it away from maybe sort of like, crusty old fans that were still sticking on, the beer-stained walls of the Dallas Auditorium or whatever, and actually, making it this vibrant thing that, kids want to take their families, parents want to take their kids to because the kids have nagged them about it.
And it still is, like, even if it isn't affordable, like at that wrestling convention at the weekend, there was, I would say, 30% of the audience were under 16 quite easily. And there was loads of kids in like cosplay and stuff like that. So, and they were there with their moms and dads who had wrestling t-shirts on. So it was the whole family there. It wasn't just a bunch of guys who liked it as a kid and still like it. Like it is a family activity. And I think, as you say, this is sort of where it starts.
Exactly.
So we must rate this cartoon. Is it a clanger, a banger, or an average meander?
I mean, it's not... It's fun for what it is. It's not like, anything outrightly offensive. I had fun watching it, and it was all right. So I would say, an average meander.
I think it's an average meander too, because even if I was a kid, as much as I would have enjoyed it, I wouldn't have thought, oh my God, this is up there with my favourite He-Man and Thundercats cartoons.
It's no way is it like even... It's not Ninja Turtle level.
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with that. It's not even Samurai Pizza Cats. Do you know what I mean? It's just, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Too hot for TV.
So the final thing we're going to look at today is a comic book called Warrior, written by the Ultimate Warrior. We're doing the first 2 issues, which were published, the first one in January of 1996. The second one, maybe February. I can't quite find a definitive release date, but then there were some sales figures that said the next month, so I'm assuming that is February. It's from Ultimate Creations, which presumably was Warrior's company. As I said, we're in 1996, so at the time, the Royal Rumble happened with Shawn Michaels winning. WrestleMania 12 then had Michaels beating Bret Hart. The aforementioned WCW Uncensored, where Hogan and Savage defeated a fuck ton of wrestlers in a doomsday cage match, which is dreadful. And ECW are riding high with their monthly pay-per-views. And the big debut of the year was The Rock. We're in a whole different era now. We're 11 years later, and a lot's happened. Rock and wrestling is dead. Hulkamania is basically dead. It's the time of the NWO. We're in the new generation, is it?
Yes. You've also, the one big thing about 96, I don't know if you mentioned it there, was the King of the Ring that year was won by a certain guy called Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Of course, yes.
When he wasn't supposed to win it,
right.
But he got it. He got the nod to win it because the original person was going to win it was Triple H, and he was the only person left who they could punish for breaking kayfabe in Madison Square Garden, because Shawn Michaels was... It's when Shawn Michaels and Triple H, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash hugged in the middle of the ring in front of a live crowd.
Yeah.
Which doesn't sound like a crime, but when they've been portraying like, bad guys, and good guys equally, it's they're not supposed to be friends. Suddenly they start hugging. Because Hall and Nash had gone to WCW. Shawn Michaels was world champion and was basically having fits of little toys out the pram moments every single 5 minutes. So they had to punish Triple H. And it meant he didn't win the King of the Ring. Stone Cold did. And it was the infamous Austin 316 said, "I just whooped your ass."
Yes, which sort of signals the beginning of the Attitude Era. Not quite, but we're sort of on the eve. But what has happened in that time previously is there's been another big star to come and go from WWE and also make a return in 1996, and that is the Ultimate Warrior.
All right, Ultimate Warrior. You've heard from Andre the Giant and Bobby the Brain Heenan. They believe, Warrior, that they have the advantage in this Intercontinental title bout. They believe that you fear the Giant.
Fear! Fear is an aberration! Fear is the air that cowards breathe! Fear is the first taste of defeat! The warrior only breathes the air of the brave! And the warrior only feasts on the fruit of victory!
Now, as a kid, I thought Ultimate Warrior was amazing. He looked cool, he was vicious, he did amazing promos, he was a warrior, and again, coming back to wrestling and suddenly going, A, you're not very good at this, and then B, finding out he was a total prick.
Yes.
So, I mean, yeah, what was he like as a wrestler and indeed a person?
I mean, wrestling has this whole thing of being very much a combination of athletic ability, as we said at the start, and an ability to tell a story, but also charisma and a defined grip of the portrayal of the character that you're doing. And sometimes people fall more on one side than the other, or do two of those without being so much on the other one. Whereas I'd say Bret Hart is a fantastic technical wrestler, but sometimes Bret Hart's promos were a bit not the best. He didn't come across as very, as a kind of guy, much charisma in him. Warrior, Ultimate Warrior would be the exact opposite. Promos, actual character, My God, the guy was amazing and absolutely leapt out the screen at you. Actual wrestling ability, not so hot.
Yeah.
Not great.
And dangerous to a point. Like, other wrestlers didn't like wrestling with him, right?
No, because he was, to use the wrestling vernacular, he worked snug, which basically means he wasn't within anything. He would legit occasionally accidentally punch you in the face square on. And that's why a lot of Bobby Heenan, to his dying day, still said that Warrior, James Hellwig, to give him his real name, it was the root cause of his neck problems that Bobby Heenan had consistently. Him and Warrior and Bobby Heenan had a lot of, which sounds weird because Bobby Heenan's not really a wrestler either. Warrior and Bobby Heenan had a lot of matches, like comedy matches almost, in like the late 80s.
Yeah.
Where if Bobby Heenan lost, he had to dress up as a weasel and all this kind of stuff, which he was nicknamed the Weasel, so that's what happened.
It made it onto a pay-per-view, I think, but it's a bunch of house shows and some of the more sort of weekly shows. It makes it onto those as well, doesn't it? Like, it's something I've seen a few times, sort of going through it, and it is bizarre.
Yeah, and there's one occasion where Warrior lifts up Heenan for a gorilla press, which is literally just picking someone up and pushing them above your head and then just dropping them. And apparently he just always did that. Heenan was apparently always telling him, don't do it too high. Just above your head and drop me. Don't, like, launch me. And every night Warrior would apparently just launch him in the air. And Heenan had to kind of like bump face first, which he maintains screwed up his neck, something wrong. So he always blamed Warrior for messing up his neck. So yeah, he was occasionally a liability.
Yeah. And ultimately, he's fired from the WWF, right? Or the WWE.
Well, the first or the second time?
Well, both.
Both. Well, yeah. Yeah. If you want a potted history, shall I give a potted history?
Let's have a potted history, yeah.
Okay. He debuts in June 1987 in the WWF as the Dingo Warrior, which is the same name he used in the territories. He spends 3 years wrestling with Rick Rude, Honky Tonk Man, and Bobby Heenan. There's a moment where he's then charged up into the echelons of the upper card. I think it's mainly he wins the Intercontinental title against Honky Tonk Man at SummerSlam in like a record 22 seconds or something like that, ending Honky Tonk's near 400-day reign as IC champion. And then that's when he starts, he has the main event of WrestleMania 6 against Hogan, which is Intercontinental Champion versus World Champion. There's occasional moments where he then has like a lot of feuds with like the bigger guys, like your Undertakers and things like that.
Yeah.
There's one fantastic quote I found here from Percy Pringle. Wrestling fans might remember as Paul Bearer in the WWF, the manager of The Undertaker. There was an angle that they filmed when they locked Warrior in an airtight casket on the funeral parlour. Percy Pringle says, "We had to drill holes in the casket he was locked in, as we didn't want him getting any more brain damage. He'd had enough of that as it was." So he has a bit of a rep, to be fair to him. Famously, before SummerSlam 91, he becomes one of only 2 wrestlers in history to hold Vince McMahon up on the same night for money. He demanded a contract of $550,000 a year, travel expenses paid, accommodation paid, and a larger percentage of merchandise takings. Now, to give anyone the context, WWF wrestlers to this day have to pay for their own travel and their own accommodation, and their own health insurance.
Wild.
America. Vince initially agrees to this, purely because he's booked Warrior to team with Hogan against Slaughter and General Adnan and Colonel Mustafa, the match made in hell at SummerSlam 91, so has to put him on for the show. He can't have Hogan on his own.
He basically says, I won't go on unless you...
Yeah, he basically says, I ain't doing it unless you agree to all this. So Vince has to agree to it. Right after SummerSlam 91, Vince suspends Ultimate Warrior for essentially holding him up for money. Warrior does not accept the suspension, and he resigns. Vince does not accept the resignation because he's still under contract until September 1992. So there's this weird impasse that goes on between the two of them. Hogan makes noises about leaving wrestling and doing movies as of 1992. WrestleMania 8 was actually broadcast at the time as Hogan's last match and his retirement match at WrestleMania 8 against Sid Justice. There's a gap at the top as far as babyfaces go, so Vince asks Warrior to come back. So that's why Warrior is the surprise run-in at the end of WrestleMania 8. He gets a match against Randy Savage at SummerSlam 92 at Wembley. He's then due to team with Savage to face Ric Flair and Razor Ramon at the Survivor Series in 1992. But then the steroid scandal is hanging heavy over Vince at the time.
Yeah.
And one of the people who is the main user of human growth hormone in the locker room at the WWF at the time is Ultimate Warrior.
You would never think it to look at him.
Yeah, I know. It's insane, isn't it? It's weird. But yeah, although he did look a lot thinner when he came back in WrestleMania 8, he's still a big guy.
Yeah.
That's the reason why Vince spends him again.
Right.
And then Warrior basically says, fuck off, and then, walks away. Doesn't really want to come back after that. The Warrior founds Warrior University in Arizona, which runs from 92 to 1995. Now, when we were talking before this, I originally thought this was some kind of weird course about life improvement. And I was going, no, it is down as a legit wrestling school.
Right, okay.
Which is nuts to consider that he thought he would be able to teach wrestling. Yeah, I know.
Nobody that qualified from there ever had a career in wrestling.
No, I just put on the notes here, there's no evidence of anyone graduating from it. In 1999, he had a career as a conservative speaker.
Yeah, this is where it gets a little dark, isn't it?
Yeah, during one occasion at the University of Connecticut, he announced to a room full of students that queering doesn't make the world go round, which is a take, I suppose. He is effectively kicked off campus at the time. And I have a quotation here from flynnfiles.com. It's dated May the 30th, 2008. And this is Ultimate Warrior, Jim Hellwig. I define conservatism literally. It's about preserving those things that have worked through time. This begins with the sustaining tradition that people need to think and provide for themselves. People who think make the world work, not those who feel.
Wow. Yeah, feelings for losers.
Feelings for losers.
I mean, if he was about today, he'd be probably not quite as extreme, but an Andrew Tate sort of figure in terms of it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you see, he had a YouTube channel as well. He's one of the sort of earliest kind of he does grip on the internet quite quickly. He's got his own website in about 97, I think. And he does have his own YouTube channel fairly early doors, about 2007, 2008.
Drops a lot of warrior wisdom on it, doesn't he?
Oh, yes. There's a very much this, what I would describe as a 12-year-old boy's idea of what masculinity is.
Yeah.
And it is that Andrew Tateism, that kind of what you should be doing, you should be strong, and you should be this, and you should be that, and you don't want anyone to tell you what to do, and you need to basically tell everyone to get out your way, and you want to be kicking people in, and showing off your raw power, that kind of thing. There's a lot of that.
Yeah. When does he die? What year does he die?
He dies in April the 8th, 2014.
So he's on Raw the night before, sort of making a comeback. And he does a speech that is just I don't know what he's saying, but it is along the lines of that power, get out of my way, I'll knock you down.
What, for the promo on Raw?
Yeah.
The last one he did?
Yeah.
Now, weird, because I went back to watch it, and bearing in mind, he's been inducted after years of animosity and saying that he would never, him and Vince were always arguing over who owned the rights to the Warrior name of Ultimate Warrior. James Hellwig, by the way, in, I think it was 2009, he actually, deed poll changes his name to Warrior.
Yeah.
Because American law means you can't copyright your real name.
Yeah.
It's the reason why you get wrestlers in NXT that will, have their real names on the indies, but will then start in NXT, like the development league of the WWE, and be called, Tringlebert Shumplebum or something like that, just to basically, because that's what they can copyright and that's what they then have to live with.
Yeah.
After years of all that, he is invited to be in the WWE Hall of Fame after WrestleMania 30 in 2014. He makes his speech at the actual award ceremony and he accepts it. And then he appears on Raw the Monday after WrestleMania, the day after. And he gives a speech. It's only 3.5 minutes long.
Oh, I remember it
which
being
is
longer.
unusual. Yeah, I did as well. When I went back and watched it, I was like, seriously?
Just feels
because he
longer.
he has a reputation of rambling somewhat and going on and on and on and on. to the point of when he arrived in WCW in 1998, on the first Nitro, he was allocated 6 minutes, and he took 22, which meant that Eric Bischoff had to rewrite an entire episode of Nitro on the fly. And he apparently kiboshed at least one match that night, couldn't go ahead because he talked so much. Anyway, which must have made him very popular. So when I saw that this was 3.5 minutes, I was a bit like, oh my God, this is really short. Obviously, he's been told to crack on. But I mean, when you start a promo with every man's heart one day beats its final beat, his spirit will be immortalized by those who made him a legend, and the spirit of the Ultimate Warrior will live forever, and you die of a heart attack the next day, I have a theory that he knew he was going.
I think that's fair. You know, his heart had undergone a lot during his lifetime.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe he'd been told that he'd got heart failure and he didn't have long. And so this was him sort of...
Or he was at more of a risk of heart failure, and it was going to be, you know, a slightest thing would knock him out kind of thing. He was walking across a car park out of the hotel when it happened.
Fucking hell. I mean, not as bad as Macho Man, who had his heart attack while he was driving his car. But,
there's that.
There's a long history of people who were around in the steroids era and their hearts giving out. Not too much later in life.
Drugs are bad, kids.
Yeah.
Drugs are bad.
I think that leads us nicely into the comic, because this comic is very much about his ethos and his legacy, from what I can tell, because it's not the clearest of comics. But at its core is Destrucity, yes.
Yes.
Now, guys, if you haven't heard of it, that's because it's not a real fucking thing. It's made up by a madman.
It's just made up by a crazy man.
The 8 points of definitions of Destrucity: the name of the galaxy in Warrior wherein the terrain of testament lies. 2, the living of one's life in the way of the warrior according to a warrior's 8 disciplines. Those are 1, physical, 2, beliefs, 3, moment of mastery, 4, attitude, 5, commitment, 6, association, 7, integrity, and 8, wisdom. Then it goes 3, the creating of a truce between one's destiny and one's reality, promising to stay true to what one is destined to be, yet accepting what is the now, one's reality. Dreams are the movies that tell one's story, some already told, some not yet written. I mean, what a load of old bollocks.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's a nonsense.
Because sometimes these alt-right commentators and these sort of, you know, motivational speakers will come up with sort of rules to live your life by and their own philosophy. And you can see that it makes sense in their head. This, I don't think makes sense
it's
in
just an
anybody's
absolute
head.
fantasy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's kind of like it's sort of scribblings and random words that you'd probably see on like the serial killer's lair on like a movie when they find it. You know what I mean? Oh, he was talking about Destrucity, and that's why he's killed 9 people.
Yeah.
It's just like, right, okay. No, I read this. I was aware that these existed, and I read this for this podcast, and all the way through reading this, I was like, none of this is making any sense. And I was like, am I the stupid one for not understanding this? Am I being really thick? And I actually got my son Kyle like over my shoulder to have a little look at it and go, you know, because he's 19, you know, maybe he's, you know, I'm just old and I just don't get this. And he looked at it for about 5 minutes and then he kind of walked away saying, it's Way of the Samurai for white people, isn't it? Which I thought was just perfect.
No, I love that. That's fucking brilliant. It's not a good comic. In fact, like I read a fair amount of comic strips for this podcast and others, and it's so self-indulgent. It's what happens when you don't have an editor.
Yeah.
That first issue is about 50 fucking pages and nothing happens in it. It's just these weird images and sort of weird quotes that are sort of self-help and sort of motivational, but also absolute bollocks.
Yep, it's just... the main character is him, or representation of him. It's mainly just wandering around what you think is Earth, but then there's like different cosmoses around it and different planets. You're like, okay, we're not on Earth. There's one moment in the first issue where he seems to talk to some sort of ghostly apparition in the sky that's like a big muscled version of him with a big beard and longer hair.
Yeah.
And then it's like, and he goes, looks at it and goes, Father? And you're like, oh my God. Is he literally thinking he's the son of God here? Is this what I'm picking up from this?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. Oh. Yeah, and as you say, there's a couple of combat sequences in it and like fight scenes in it, but none of it makes any sense. It's not a comic book to portray a story. It's more a pamphlet for what he thinks is a way of life.
Yeah. And also how he sees himself. I'm aware that comics will overemphasize how somebody looks, but nobody looks as hench as Warrior looks in that comic.
For being a man who seemingly was quite homophobic at one point in his life, although I will point out his last ever match was against Orlando Jordan in Barcelona, of all places, in 2008. And Orlando Jordan's an openly gay man. He's an openly gay wrestler. So you wouldn't probably want to wrestle an openly gay man if you were homophobic.
No.
Because obviously a lot of, holding and things. So there's that. But yeah, for being at this time, you would imagine, queering doesn't make the world go round and all that kind of stuff. You would think that, there would be less male nudity in your comic book.
Well, it's fine when it's just you.
Well, yes. Or even a mirror image of you, which is in the second issue, which he's fighting kind of like a shadow version of himself, like bloody Link in Ocarina of Time or something.
It is bizarre. He's turned himself into this beast, this alt-right beast who has his own look on the world, but I've just got no idea what's going on. Somewhere he's in a coma, so maybe it's life on Mars, I don't know. We cut back to the real world a couple of times. His girlfriend takes an overdose or something like that.
Something like that. Because is it not because she misses him and wants to be with him?
Yeah, of course.
Because she can handle the Destrucity. And God help him. I mean, we can talk for, about, and I'm trying to be fair to him here. This is probably his attempt at creating a brand for himself.
Yeah.
Outside of wrestling, and specifically outside of the WWE, WWF PR machine. And I mean, he made a good hash at it. As I say, he would sell, have you seen Warrior's Weapons of Wisdom before?
No, I've not.
Right, anyone who's listening to this right now, go on Google and type in Ultimate Warrior Weapons of Wisdom, right? And you will be presented with an entire web page of the Ultimate Warrior's artwork, which was kind of like this. It was him actually scribbling portraits of like authors he liked or musicians he liked, and then writing some weird alt-right bollocks next to it. And he would put these on a canvas and he would sell them.
Wow.
And it's just, holy moly. Just looking.
Where do I get some of these? Can I buy them?
I think they may still be available if you wanted to, proceeds to his family and all that. If you fancied some hateful right-wing rhetoric that's on a canvas alongside a picture of, Nicholas Tesla or something like that,
Well, look, he was ahead of his time, like people would lap this shit up right now.
Exactly, and this is it. He had a brand he wanted to portray out there and make a career out of. Because I don't think he particularly loved the wrestling business.
No, he was not a fan. He was a bodybuilder, right?
Yeah, he was a bodybuilder to begin with, and he kind of just got into the wrestling business because it paid more than bodybuilding.
Yeah.
And that's really why. That's why he never really bothered to learn how to wrestle properly, quote unquote. But any chance he got, he was off.
Yeah.
And he would only really come back to the business when it would seem finance dictates that he probably should.
He said that about this comic in an interview, the comic book is more important to me, referring to wrestling. One of the disciplines of living your life, the way of the warrior, and I caught Destrucity. It's about making a truth between your destiny and your reality. I believe in what I'm doing. I'm going to go for it, and I don't care if I never make a dime, which I don't think he did.
No, probably not. I think that's quite safe. Yes, quite safe. I mean, but I can't remember. I actually wish I could find it. I spent ages trying to find it over the weekend. When the video game WWE 2K14 came out, around about the time he was in the Hall, we were going to get an induction Hall of Fame, he was the pre-order DLC for it. You could play as the Ultimate Warrior. It was the first time you could play as the Warrior in a video game, in WWF video game for years.
Yeah.
And during the promotional tour for it, someone actually asked him and said, well, why do it now? Because you've spent years, not wanting to do anything with the WWF and WWE, for the animosity of the years and you and Vince, blah, 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 blah. And he gave an answer that was something along the lines, it was interesting because it was something along the lines of, he wanted people to remember the Ultimate Warrior as he was at the time, in his prime. And that's why he, if that meant, a portrayal in a video game, people could remember the Ultimate Warrior as a video, in this character that was on screen, strong and mighty and fine. And these comics are the same thing, in the portrayal as strong, mighty, in the picture form. I suppose there is some credit to be given to him that he's not gone down the route that some other wrestlers, like a Ric Flair, who has to wrestle because he's got 4 ex-wives to pay alimony to, and therefore has to legitimately get a doctor to turn his pacemaker off so he can have one final match, which is god-awful.
That is one of the worst things I've ever seen. He has 2 heart attacks in the ring during that.
Yeah, he nearly dies on the apron. So, to be fair, if we can give Ultimate Warrior a little bit of credit, at least he understood that people want to see the character of the Ultimate Warrior, and if that means it's in comic book or video game form, then so be it, because that's probably the best way of remembering him by.
I mean, but you also have to wonder that if he hadn't passed away, would finances or whatever have meant that he would have had some shitty return? And, some people wrestle well into later in life and are able to do it. Sting, for instance, he had a pretty solid career.
Oh, yeah.
All the way through. As you say, Ric Flair, on the other hand, not so much.
Yeah. But key to Sting having the retirement he was, I mean, Sting won the AEW World Tag Team title with Darby Allin in his last match and then vacated it straight afterwards, and had, for all intents and purposes, a fantastic send-off.
Yeah.
And really respectful, and, was allowed to come down the ring with his 2 sons dressed in his previous gear and all this kind of stuff, which looked amazing. But, I mean, Sting gets to do that because he followed the Steamboat rule, which I don't know if you know what that is.
No.
Okay. Ricky Steamboat, the wrestler, who also didn't have to come back, and when he did once for WrestleMania against Chris Jericho and could still go at like 55.
He was the only one, and it was like 3.
Yeah, the only one in that Legends match, that could still go, but he could. Steamboat had a rule in his wrestling where he would, every pay packet, he would split it into thirds.
Right.
1/3 was pay your bills, 1/3 was save, and the other third was have fun.
Right.
And so that's what Ricky Steamboat followed, and Sting took him up on it as well. Sting followed what he called the Steamboat rule.
Nice.
And that's why Sting is loaded now and doesn't have to wrestle for any financial pressure at all whatsoever. He can just do what the fuck he likes. Steamboat's the same. It was Flair that was like spending loads and loads of money on Rolex watches and limousines and Lear jets, trying to live up to his gimmick. And then, essentially marrying women and divorcing them 6 months later.
Yeah.
And then having to pay them all the money and the child support. So that's where you get that.
It's a wild, wild industry. And, for the Warrior story, there's obviously lots of things in there that are problematic and I don't like. But he was a fairly committed husband, and he seemed sensible in the extent of sort of being business-focused and stuff like that, not necessarily in the ways he made his money. But that's me disagreeing with his weird alt-right politics. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe he wouldn't have returned and his legacy, at least the image of the Warrior, would be safe. But the comic book is an interesting format. Do you think this could have worked, perhaps, being given to another writer? Do you think there's an adventure of the Ultimate Warrior to be told?
I think if you listen to people will say the Warrior's promos were terrible because he just made them up and they're all essentially just claptrap. But they are memorable claptrap, to be fair.
Yeah.
So, the WrestleMania 6, put the plane into a nosedive, Hulk Hogan, is still to this day, you can just repeat the whole thing. To be honest, he had the imagination there. The guy was, for all, if you look at wrestling characters that could have had a comic book made out of them,
Yeah.
Warrior's pretty high on the list. If it was just him being sort of this John Constantine kind of like guy wrestling all these demons, literally wrestling demons, and in different dimensions and realms, fantastic, brilliant. But what it is, because no one's told him this is bollocks, as you say, it doesn't have an editor. What it ends up being is this weird, bloody proto-masculine pamphlet trying to essentially just convert you to some weird religion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think like what we're talking about earlier with the rock and wrestling cartoon was that era of those old school wrestlers who didn't really have gimmicks, whereas people like the Ultimate Warrior, Undertaker, Papa Shango, like you could put them all in comics and do interesting things that were outside of the ring, and you have your own sort of WWE X-Men essentially or something like that, and it'd work really well because there's a mythology to their characters, even if it is quite at base level.
I mean, you can imagine, like, the warrior is on this desert landscape, and everything's dry, and it's this gulch, and he finds these people he can't possibly face on his own. So he calls in the Legion of Doom, and they arrive on their motorcycles, and that'd be brilliant. Yeah. That'd be absolutely mind-blowingly awesome. But no, it's all about him.
Yeah, absolutely.
It has to be about him and him alone.
And so it's this bizarre story that you can't really get a handle on. The art is done by an artist called Jim Callahan, who went on to work for Marvel and Dark Horse and has a really good career. I couldn't find anything, but I'd love to hear an interview with him about what he found it like working with him, because I suspect that this was an early job that he took for a paycheck, and he was like, you want me to illustrate 5 issues of a comic book? Abso-fucking-lutely.
Oh, yeah.
And I can imagine working with this guy who's written it, but who is also, I guess, funding it. And that's why it just goes on, and it's bizarre. He must, no comic book writers were doing fucking 50-odd pages an issue back then on DC or Marvel, let alone for somebody's vanity project.
No, I mean, it's not the... I was trying to think as well, is is there any wrestling-based comic book that has worked? And I can think of one.
What's that?
I can think of one, and I have it on my shelf. It's, Tony Schiavone?
Yeah.
He's got a book about him getting at the wrestling business. And his time in WCW, and it's called Butts in Seats.
Right. But so that's a true story,
brilliant. Yeah, that's a true story. And Tony Schiavone's obviously had someone there going, oh, well, what, almost kind of ghostwriting it.
Yeah.
And then getting the story together. And him, and then they illustrate it. But it's him basically as a kid getting into wrestling, and then getting into the commentary, and then getting into WCW, and him in the final days of WCW, and then getting back into AEW. But yeah, Butts in Seats by Tony Schiavone is a fucking awesome comic book.
Excellent. I'll check that out. Because there are quite a few. And you know what? At some point, I'd like to dip into a couple and see just how badly the others do or don't work.
Yeah.
But because in theory, it's something somebody should have got right more times than they have beyond a wild vanity project. It seems like a no-brainer in many ways, but for whatever reason, it just hasn't worked.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have much more you want to say on this comic?
Not really. I think I've pretty much exhausted all my notes by the fact I've thrown them over my shoulder on the couch behind me.
Excellent. So, is it a clanger, a banger, or an average meander?
I think it's average propaganda is what it is. If we're going to go, it's a clanger. No, sorry. It's an absolute clanger. As a comic book, it fails because it's got no story in it at all. And it is an absolute definition of a vanity project.
Yeah. I will give slight props to Jim Callahan for having to deal with what were obviously some unusual requests and creating this beast of a character that is the Warrior. Because the art is not bad, but I can imagine it was given some unusual directions that perhaps he wasn't used to taking.
I think a lot of it would have probably involved ripping his shirt off in front of Jim Callahan going, this, but bigger.
But yeah, it's a clanger from me too. It's a vanity project of the worst kind. But I'm glad we've had a little dip into it, because this is what this podcast is all about.
Too hot for TV.
Right, Cam. If people want to find you on the internet, where can they find you?
I have this really annoying habit of using different social media sites for different things that I do. So if you want, generally on Blue Sky, there is Triple H with 1P, because it's a play on Triple H. I've had it for years, so you can search for me on there if you want to follow me. I am 1/3 of we said we weren't going to mention it, but Doctor Who podcast YouTube show now of the Polish Box. That's POLIS, because we're Scottish. And I am also on Instagram as The Quivering Brush. If you're into Warhammer and you like, painting Warhammer, then I put all that on my Instagram. And I have a website, which I really should update with more stuff, with CameronPhillipsWriter.co.uk. That's Phillips with 2 L's, which is my story writing, which occasionally I get published and have fun at book launches and things like that. So yeah, that's really me.
I
forgot
about wrestling podcast.
Yeah. I nearly forgot my wrestling podcast, having spent 2 hours talking about wrestling. Conquistabores.com. Google will probably try to get you to search for the Mexican Aztec Conquistadores, but no, you want Conquistabores. All the episodes are on YouTube. We've been doing that on and off for about 10 years. So we try and decide. There's me, Phil Doyle, Ewan Taylor, and Geordie Allen Milburn, Hot Sauce Geordie Allen Milburn. And we look back at wrestling pay-per-views of the past and see if they still stand up now. And we are on a mission to try and determine what is the best pay-per-view of all time. So yeah, if you search for Conquistadores on YouTube, you should be able to have the whole list of episodes on there.
Brilliant, and it's well worth a listen to. I've dipped my toe into many an episode.
Thank you.
I will get through the lot eventually, I'm sure. The only ones I haven't listened to are things I haven't seen the pay-per-view of, because I'm trying to clock them up in that respect. I've done about 50% of them, I think. Excellent. Well, as I said, thank you so much for joining me. This has been an absolute hoot.
It has been a pleasure. I've loved doing this. Give me a chance to talk about wrestling for 2 hours and I will come running.
Well, when we do the next series, I'm sure we can find some other things in the treasure trove of the expanded universe of wrestling to chat about too.
It would be fantastic.
If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, as it helps people to find the pod. Look for Too Hot for TV on Instagram, TikTok and YouTube at Too Hot, 4 pod. That's Too Hot, 4 pod for the latest updates and additional content. Next time, I'll be joined by Ian Winterton and we'll be looking at the expanded universe of The Terminator. But until then, I've been Dylan.
I've been Cameron.
And this has been Too Hot for TV.
Too hot for TV.
I don't know if I could get any references to Doctor Who or any of this.
I think this might be our challenge, actually, to be the first episode that doesn't mention Doctor Who at all.
Doesn't mention Doctor Who at all. We might get away with it.